All right, time now for Hot Topics. We'll get into it. This morning, President Joe Biden announced more aid for Ukraine. That includes an additional $800 million in military assistance as part of that $13.6 billion aid package that was signed into law yesterday. So we want to know, is the U.S. doing enough to help support Ukraine? Head to abc7news.com/vote. That aid package includes weapons that Ukrainians have been requesting, like anti-armor and anti-air systems. Biden says the U.S. is also sending drones. Now, this morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made an emotional plea to Congress, asking for more help and calling for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. The White House has said it does not support a no-fly zone. Reggie?
Well, first of all, let me just say that this was one of the most stunning speeches that I've ever seen from a politician or from a leader of any nation. And remember, this was a man who has no political experience. He's an actor who overwhelmingly was voted in to become president of Ukraine. And now he finds himself in this horrible position. It was extremely emotional. It was also, I think, extremely effective. He was not only talking to the U.S. Congress and the president directly, but he was making a plea to the American people, I believe. He went right for our hearts. He compared what he and his people are going through to what we went through as a country during 9/11 and during the attack on Pearl Harbor. So whether or not our president or our Congress decide to change things because of this speech, I think that minds were changed in American homes. And should we get to the point where we find it untenable that Russia continues to attack Ukraine and that we or NATO must get involved, I think we will remember this speech. I think it was that important, Kristen.
It was that important, and it was that effective. Look, he did not get and did not think he was going to get the #1 thing he wants, which is a no-fly zone. But you would have to enforce that. And if you enforce that, it is escalation. It is that fear of being drawn into the war right now, knowing that Russia has nuclear weapons as well. So, you know, but Plan B, he was very smart and practical and mentioned, well, then give us more sophisticated weaponry. And that seems to have been answered in part. You know, I'm not a military expert, and those who really know the weapons defense systems and the aircrafts can talk about what type is, you know, actually what they need. But the point is, he is getting something and more support, and he has gotten attention by appealing to our sense of democracy, by talking directly to President Biden, essentially through Congress, but saying, being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace, thereby putting that responsibility squarely on the U.S.'s shoulders. So that is big. And I think so far it's seeming to be effective. Whether it is enough remains to be seen. Mike?
It's a crazy dance that we are at right now. We're going to give them aid. Wink, wink. Not even wink, wink. We're telling the whole world we're giving them aid to fight the Russians. Yet the line in the sand is the no-fly zone, which is interesting. So that is what's going to escalate this to where it's a direct conflict of the U.S. against Russia. It's not the fact that here we are supplying your enemy with some of the proceeds or some of the provisions that they need. It's interesting, this political dance that we are embarking on in the steps through the landmine that we're taking to make sure this doesn't become World War III. And it's frustrating when you look at how Russia's lying. Russian state television is lying. I was talking to a colleague, in fact, it was Spencer yesterday, who has a friend who said about 70% of the people that read her blog are from Russia and believe what the Russian state television is telling them, the lies about how they're trying to denazify Ukraine. And only 30% believe what the rest of the world believes. So you're not only having a political battle as far as that dance with our armies, but also in the court of public opinion and perception.
Our viewers are voting today saying, 61% of them saying that the U.S. is not doing enough to help Ukraine.
And if you look at the video and you look at the plea he's making, and yes, I think a lot of us feel that way, but what do we do not to make this escalate? What is the next step? What can we do? What is Putin's line in the sand is the best way I can say it.
And we do not know.
We don't, because he's him.
All right, so we're going to move on to another more local topic, and that is our drought. A historically dry start to the year, and the governor's call for conservation, new state numbers show, we're not exactly meeting it. In fact, we used more water in recent months, especially in January. So in July, Governor Newsom called for a voluntary reduction of 15% statewide. So we want to know, is it time for the state to turn to mandatory water restrictions? abc7news.com/vote. State water use increased by 2.5% in January compared to 2020 in January. A scientist with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab spoke with our East Bay Times media partners. She blames the lack of conversation. That's weird. Conservation. I think that's what we meant.
Tongue twister.
I'm going to just keep reading the wrong word in the prompter, though. Conservation as disaster fatigue. In other words, that people are so immersed in so many recent crises, including what's happening in Ukraine, that the drought falls pretty low on the list. Kristen?
Yes. I mean, I think psychologists will tell us that we are basically equipped to deal with one mega stressor at a time, one crisis at a time, if you will. But right, we have Ukraine, we have COVID, we have the inflation, and we have water, which we probably don't see as immediately pressing because we kind of deal with this all the time in California, sadly. So also, I think another explanation for why people haven't stepped up as much is that our baseline for water use is already lower. After many years of drought and asking to reduce, a lot of us have already made switches, you know, like low flow shower heads. So we're already using less. So when you've already cut back, to cut back additionally gets more and more challenging. Not saying it can't be done. So Mike, we may be at that point when we need mandatory. I don't know what the reserves are and how dire the situation is.
Yeah, I kind of fall on the other side of it. I believe we need to do something to conserve water, but there's so many other issues about where our water is going and who is taking our water and where are they taking it and where are they taking it from. Dams, what we're learning, are not the solution. We haven't built a dam since 1980, New Melones Dam, and most of those dams were built, 150 years ago to stop catastrophic flooding when the snow melt does come, and it comes at a rapid pace. We're also using that for drinking water. Dams also negatively affect the ecosystem on either side of the dam. So we've got to look underground, which is where we're pulling most of the water, but where we can store also the most amount of water. But then you get into the politics of who owns the ground and who is buying up that land, wink, wink, big business, and who is going to charge the state to put the money in the to hold the water in the ground. So you've got a lot of political tentacles and a lot of big businesses with a lot of money that are squeezing out you and me, and it's telling you and me that we have to keep conserving, or the farmers have to keep conserving, when some of these other people aren't acting in our best interest. I mean, I had a bunch of notes written down here, but Sites Reservoir is the newest thing. Now, what it's going to do, it's not like a normal reservoir with a dam. It's going to have a smaller dam, and it's not going to impede fish migration, but it's going to be west of Sacramento in kind of that marshy land. And when we have these excessive rainfalls from atmospheric river, instead of it flowing out into the ocean, these site reservoirs will capture that and hold it. So it's another new technology we're looking into that would be a lot better. Plus the desalination plant they're trying to get going down in SoCal could also help.
I'll just say quickly that only 20% of the water we use total in California comes from homes. So, I mean, I don't think it's time to do this because we've already cut back. And the Bay Area has done better than the rest of the state, so I don't think we should be treated all equally.
If you want to put mandates in the new housing. You can take your dishwasher water, your washing machine water, and run it through your irrigation system. It's perfectly fine. You could do that. That's just another way of recycling water. Make that mandatory before you do anything else.
Our use is a drop in the bucket.
Right.
So to speak. All right. Is it time for California to turn to mandatory water restrictions? 79% of you say yes. All right, but perhaps you don't mean us as home, residents, but somebody else, businesses or other places. Don't know what you mean, but yes, 79% of you say yes. I think, Mike, that's a reflection of people recognizing how bad the drought is. Okay, if you want people to take you seriously at work, leave emojis out of the conversation. Researchers at Tel Aviv University found that people who use pictures and emojis when they communicate look less powerful than their colleagues who do not. We want to know, should you leave emojis out of workplace conversations? Head to abc7news.com/vote. They say it doesn't matter if you're the CEO, office manager, or an intern on your first day. Using images in an email or even on your Zoom profile could make you appear weaker and less authoritative. The study says employees who use words instead of images are more likely to get promoted. Mike?
I don't use a lot, but I also read the room and read the person I'm talking to in our relationship, depending on whether I use emojis a lot. And I don't use them a lot with people that have higher ranking than I do in the station, but every once in a while I think it calls for it. But on a daily basis, I mean, you're not going to pop up a PowerPoint presentation or make a proposal with emojis in it. I mean, I don't think that's the right way. Reggie?
Well, I'll speak for myself. I speak mostly to my colleagues on Slack, not through email. So I wouldn't use emojis in an email, but we use them all the time in Slack. I guess that's seen as a more, I don't know, conversational way to communicate with our colleagues, so I have no problem with it.
I mean, they make it so easy. You hover over it, you click on whatever emoji, like thumbs up for I agree with you, sounds good, right?
I think Slack encourages
TY
it.
for thank you, like that's easy on Slack. But in emails, no, I don't generally use them. And I think I've tried to avoid exclamation points because I've heard in the past that that makes you seem less powerful and authoritative than just a period. So, yeah. Mike, that's why. It's not that I'm not excited ever by the things you mentioned. I just go with the period because I want to.
Didn't take it personally.
Our audience says only in certain cases, 66%. All right, thanks for voting today.